What's going on, guys? JonahPlayss here today. We're back with another video here on the channel, and today it's going to be an interesting one because I am going to be reviewing Nintendo Life's ranking of the best Pokemon games of all time. This was made back in May of 2023, this year, so I'm going to rank them. I know you're probably like, Jonah, what's all of a sudden this infatuation with Pokemon? I've always loved Pokemon, but now I get to bring it to the channel, and I've always wanted to rank the games. So I'm going to give you my opinion on these rankings as well. So obviously to start with is number 21, the least favorite, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. And if you don't know why this game already is looked upon so low, then you have been living under a rock, or you're just not a Pokemon fan. But let's read it. There are still plenty more ways we'd like to see the Pokemon franchise evolve, but despite some glaring technical hiccups, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet has us excited about the series' future. We really hope Game Freak can figure out how to smooth out the series' ongoing performance issues on Switch, because they're going to become a serious detriment over time. Correct. Because, oh my gosh, the bugs in this game make me want to chuck my Switch at the next passerby citizen. Scarlet and Violet is most fun and exciting when you're just exploring the world. That's the point. If it's more fun when you're just open exploring the world, yes, that's a good thing, but you have to have a good story. And while there are many small new details and improvements to the Pokemon formula, it still plays safe in a few areas. Regardless, things point towards a promising future for Gen 9 and beyond. It's a smaller step than many may have hoped for, especially considering what Pokemon Legends Arceus, or Arceus, depending on your pronunciation, did. But it definitely is one in the right direction. I'm not even going to talk about this one because if you're a Pokemon fan, you should know. Okay, Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. Now, anybody who knows me obviously knows that my favorite Pokemon game of all time was the original Pokemon Pearl. It was my first that I ever played. I loved it. I loved the story. Yes, the battles were a bit of a slow pace, but it was great regardless. While some of the slower elements of the game have been fixed, which was the only real problem. So why it's ranked this low, I don't know. And the Grand Underground makes up for the comparatively weak Pokédex. Don't take a shot at the Pokédex like that. The new art style and other stumbles make this pair a somewhat disappointing retread of Generation 4, which are the Sinnoh region Pearl, Diamond, and Platinum. If the remit of these remakes was to remain faithful to the original, we wish they also stuck to the pixel art aesthetic. Okay, yes, the chibi thing that you see here, that was not the best idea, but the rest of it was fine. These brilliant and shining remakes stick very closely to the original template, which some players will no doubt welcome, but aside from the Grand Underground and the connectivity within the current games in the series, there's very little reason to play over the original copies. Well, yes, obviously. That's the thing with most remakes. There's only a few in the series that I'd rather play over the original. Pearl will always be Pearl on the DS to me, not this, but I would like to try this. Let's go Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee at number 19 on the Switch, which, by the way, is an original, remaster and remake of sorts of the original games from Kanto. These games are a beautiful reimagining of the video game classic, updating a 20-year-old game, older than that, has to be, in ways which make it infinitely more accessible and user-friendly for a modern audience, while keeping the magic first discovered all those years ago. On the downside, the motion control mechanic is fun but flawed, forcing you to shift from one playstyle to another to get the best experience. However, the game still does a superb job of striking a balance between an easy route of entry for newcomers and just offering enough post-game challenge and competitive play elements and nostalgia, of course, to please series veterans like myself and my brothers. As a result, these new titles really do offer something for everyone, which can't always be said of the mainline Pokemon entries. They may not be an absolute masterpiece, but we'd urge any Pokefans out there to give these ones a go. Who is messaging me on Discord? Let me find out if it's important. I'm assuming I know who. Never mind. Okay, Pokemon Sword and Shield at 18 for the Switch, which is interesting that they put these above the Let's Go Eevee and Pikachu. These games succeed in bringing some new ideas to the table, although there are areas where it could be pushed further. What's done right is done right, but there's elements that they feel like they've come from a decade-old design document. There are moments contained within that are best in the series I've ever had, which is a stretch. But this joy is occasionally spoiled by contrasting moments and left us disappointed. It's an experience full of highs and lows, from the unadulterated wonder and joy of seeing brand new Pokemon in a stadium full of cheering crowds to the monotonous and dragged out dialogue we just wanted to skip. The wonders of exploring the wild area feel like true evolution of the series. On the whole, Pokemon Sword and Shield were a very solid start to the HD generation of Pokemon games, although there's room for improvement. Well, that's the point. It's their first time going around. I'm not going to defend it because I thought these games were very weak when it came to Pokemon. But there was a lot of issues with it. I didn't care for it. The region I thought was cool. It's like a very, Northern England, Scotland kind of area, which I, very much appreciated. I thought it was cool, but that's about all you got. Up next is, I cannot believe they swapped these two. These two need to be, immediately I can tell you these two need to be swapped. Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon were way better than the originals. With X and Y and Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, 3DS already had some excellent Pokemon games to its name. Pokemon Sun and Moon felt like a new start for players who had perhaps fallen off the RPG collectathon bandwagon, with improved character models and customization. That's not how you spell customization. Plus the addition of powerful Z moves, which was annoying. The return of the fan favorite Gen 1 Pocket Monsters, or Pokemon, for those who don't know, and new Alolan form help enthuse the franchise faithful, as well as people who can only reliably recall the first 151. Extra forms, moves, and activities in the Ultra Editions make them the most complete variants. Although it's a shame we never got to see our favorite Pokemon in stereoscopic 3D, this is the creme de la creme of the traditional style Pokemon on 3DS. But what would make the originals better? Like, at all? I mean, look at this. Look at this. What is that? Looks like a stand from JoJo's. Like, that's Abdal's stand from Part 3. Magician's Yellow. Pokemon Sun and Moon are some of the best Pokemon games that game. Okay. Pelago, the side quest, the absolute stunning nature of the presentation, it's all sheer joy from start to finish. Game Freak managed to carefully balance the inclusion of the new mechanics without totally ruining things for the most hardcore fans. It got its content coming out of its ears. It's a much more interesting story, wrong, and it rewards exploration in no other way no other title has in the series. Whether you're a Pokemon fan, new or old, this should be in your DS library. I've not played these yet. I've only seen bits and pieces. I have, I believe, Sun, and I need to play it at some point. I have it. I just never played it because I was told it was bad. But, oh my gosh, dude, that's crazy. The original Diamond and Pearl are this low? All right, title of the video is already going to be worst Pokemon article of all time. Worst Pokemon ranking of all time. Doing our best to avoid spouting Prince lyrics. What's there to say about Pokemon Diamond and Pearl? The core experience holds up as well as it ever did. Then what's the problem? And at the time, these were the greatest Pokemon games ever created. I still think they are. As with so many video games successful enough to spawn never-ending series of sequels, each entry is destined to settle beneath its successors, compacting down with the passing time into their mere fossils. Worth collecting, treasuring, and remembering, yes, but worth playing when they've been iterated on upteen times since. I don't care what games have come out past it. Do I like Pokemon Black and White? Yes. Do I like Pokemon X and Y? Sure. But nothing even before that. Red and Blue, Heart Gold and Soul Silver, all those games, I like them. But Pokemon Pearl was my first, and it's, in my opinion, the best. There's a tough question to answer, and we suppose it's the price of success and progress. But while Diamond and Pearl might not boast the refinement we're now accustomed to, they're still excellent Pokemon games that deserve to be taken off the shelf and actually played with once in a while. They're sure to make you a happy boy or girl. Did you just assume everybody's No, I'm kidding. Page 2. God, this is like the worst ranking I've ever seen. Game Freak hit the nail squarely in the head once again with X and Y, a wonderful blend of excitement and nostalgia. It evolved the core series with its impressive polygonal 3D environments and masterful camera angles, adding a few technical adjustments along the way with a brand new Pokemon type, which is Fairy, by the way, to the original formula that we all know and love. It's not quite a revolution, no, and it's hindered slightly by the meager use of its host platform glasses. Free 3DS capabilities, but X and Y are a very fine pair. Notice they left out Mega Evolution and the sick legendaries you get, and the fact that it's criminal that we didn't get a Z game with it. The original Ruby and Sapphire. Ruby and Sapphire ushered in a third generation of Pokemon and moved the series on from the stalwart 8-bit onto the more capable wider platform of the Game Boy Advanced. The removal of the day and night cycle irked some of the Poke faithful, but Gen 3 brought it with a host of new features, including 2 versus 2 battles, so doubles, and nature mechanics that gave Pokemon Trainer a whole new stat-filled rabbit hole to go down. The widescreen presentation of the Game Boy Advance improved the look of the battle screens, and the entire Hoenn region looked incredibly lush compared to the 8-bit Kanto and Johto. Plus, these were some of the best legendaries at the time, and the stories were fire. The original Pokemon Red and Blue for the Game Boy. Well, Pokemon Red and Blue are both vintage games, and I can say that as well. They're very much vintage, very old veteran-style games. With the occasional issue, they're still extremely engaging and involving titles, which to drown your free time. The gameplay is similar by modern standards, but there's still a wealth of intricacies and complexity to be explored if you want to train a team to pixel-powered perfection. If you were to drag everything about the game and dump it into a nice, shiny, new 3D engine, you'd be forgiven for thinking these were brand new games. You can't say that about many Game Boy titles. There are certain wrinkles that were ironed out in subsequent entries, but there's a special charm to finding those first 151 Pokemon. Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee may have updated said games for the Switch generation. The depth of the original still makes them competitive to play on original hardware. Just make sure you've got a mate and a link cable, and you have to trap all of them. I mean, I don't... Okay. And then right above it is Pokemon Yellow. Why? What is this ranking, dude? I can already tell you already I know what they put at number 1. And it's not the game they should have put. This enhanced version of the original games, which we just discussed, brought over the elements of an incredibly popular anime. So Pikachu takes center, they spelled center wrong, don't at me Europeans, center stage as your starter Pokemon. He follows you around outside his Pokeball and cannot be traded or evolved. The nurses and police officers around Kanto were substituted for Nurse Joys and Officer Ginnies. Some Pokemon locations and appearances were altered, and various sprites and world elements were reworked to better reflect the wider brand as it had been established since Red and Blue launched. The Western version, which means the American version of Pokemon Yellow, got a minor palette enhancement, which works well if you're playing on a Game Boy Color. Although this was not a full Game Boy Color game, the changes add an extra layer of charm, and serving Pikachu minigame is a lot of fun, which it was. But whichever version you pick up, the original Pokemon title remained an enjoyable gaming experience. Simple in appearance, while lacking the bells and whistles of later games, they nevertheless engross from start to finish. Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire for 3DS. So we're going to the top 10. Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire seem similar to X and Y, as you might expect, but the story and the environments you encounter feel, despite the fact they are remakes, very fresh and unique. I will say that. What's interesting about Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire is you would think going into it, it's just Ruby and Sapphire again, but there's a lot more to it. Like, it's a lot of a more, like, oomph of a story. I like it. They're not an extensive upgrade from their other 3DS counterparts, but any Pokefan who's played one of the series' remakes in the past knows not to expect radical overhauls. These titles should be considered as accompaniments to X and Y. That's weird. Even though they arguably surpass those games by pushing new ideas such as the Soar ability, which, yes, but you didn't mention Pokemon Mega Evolution, though. Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green. So the original remakes of Fire Red, Red and Green were Game Boy Advance remakes of the classic game started all. Yes, the Game Boy originals were known as Red and Green in Japan because they're allowed to be, because it was Charizard and Bulbasaur, or, well, Charizard and Venusaur, if I'm not mistaken. Because, yeah, Bulbasaur, Ivysaur, Venusaur, yep. Okay. Did Pokemon really ever get better than this? That's up for debate, but vastly updated visuals and the ability to connect to various different Pokemon games to collect over 350 Pokemon and enhanced user interface were just some of the upgrades offered in this 32-bit revamp. For players intimately familiar with the Kanto games, this was the first opportunity of many, of course, to come and indulge in some nostalgia and catch the original 151 all over again. Who could possibly resist? Watch out, Metapod, or should we call you Metapoo? Ah, the comedy happy days. I don't know if this guy's played all the Pokemon games before. Pokemon Black and White DS. And I love Black and White. I'm playing Black as we speak. It's in the other room charging right now because I'm stuck on clay right now. The ground, I guess? Gym leader? I don't even know. Pokemon Black and White may not have the added nostalgia of Heart Gold and Soul Silver. There's your reference for what's going, to be in first. But they're up there with some of the best in the series. While they lack in links to play, they've gained past... While they lack in links to the past, they gain by recreating the sense of discovery felt when embarking on that first Pokemon journey. They suffer in reputation for being the only game in the series to have direct numbered sequels set in the game region, albeit visiting new locations despite being shoved back in the queue in some people's minds. These introductions to Gen 5 are still fantastic games and worth revisiting. Are you literally saying because they have a sequel, Black and White 2, or Black 2 and White 2, that they're worse? What a moron. Pokemon Legends Arceus. They're counting this even though it's not a mainline game. And technically not even a theoretical Pokemon game because it's different. Designated a mainline entry in the series by Game Freak itself, Pokemon Legends Arceus or Arceus feels like, I don't know how to pronounce it. It's one or the other. Feels like a result of the developers learning lessons for 25 years, refining the formula, and finally taking the franchise in a new, incredibly exciting direction. Technically, it may still stumble in places, but with an emphasis on extremely rewarding exploration, addictive catching mechanics, and a fine roster of Pokemon and a genuine sense of scale that's unlike anything else in the series. Pokemon Legends Arceus is up there with the greatest Pokemon game ever made in our book. And for those of you who will get this reference, I believe the hero is Alder from Pokemon Black and White. Pokemon Crystal from the Game Boy Color. Wow. I'm impressed they added this. Pokemon Crystal is the perfect swan song to what many fans consider the best generation of Pokemon games, which was Gold and Silver. In the series' final Game Boy Color entry, it featured a plethora of welcome new features over the base games, including the ability to play as a female character for the first time, which is true. We didn't have that. It was red and blue all the time at the time, plus more things to do. Tweaked graphics and UI, and a slight notch up in the challenge department. Crystal took what Pokemon Gold and Silver did so marvelously, and what made Johto worth exploring once more, and Kanto for the umpteenth time, for that matter, because they are connected. It truly proves that nostalgia is far from the sole factor that makes this game so great to pick up again. See, I can respect this entry because they know what they're talking about. This is very true. This game was great for its time. I remember playing this game. I loved it. With like Cresselia and all that, that was great. Pokemon Gold and Silver. Let's see who's texting me again. My friend Cam Lua. Why are you sending me JoJo memes? Excuse me. Pokemon Gold and Silver have always been the highlight in the Pokemon series, and now, even now, decades since they were originally released, they remain a true brilliant experience. Perhaps it's indicative of the series' slow and steady iterative. I said that right. Iterative approach, but these games feel just as good as they did all those years ago. They're fantastic games that will evoke warm, fuzzy moments for anyone who played them all those years ago. Updating the original with a gorgeous splash of color on the Game Boy Color, obviously. Adding 100 new Pokemon. I don't like how they say Pocket Monsters. And throwing, I know that's what it means, but still. In the entire Kanto region, for good measure. Thanks to Satoru Iwata, yeah. And even people who adore the entire series have been known to argue that Pokemon peaked at Gen 2. I actually do know people who think that. Pokemon Black and White 2. See, there you go. Oh, stop it. Stop it. There we go. Number 4. Wow. I don't even know what could be number 2 then. Those who brushed Pokemon Black and White 2 off as simply more of the same game were sorely mistaken. That's what I said. That was the worst mistake anybody has ever made, was thinking that this game was just lackluster are unnecessary. On a superficial level, the Pokemon games have not changed much, and for good reason. The foundation that was placed way back in Pokemon Red and Blue was incredibly solid and engaging from the off. By adding more around it and tweaking things under the hood, the series has grown far beyond its humble, monochromatic origins. Even at the pace of the games is a little more glacial than some people would like, meaning slow. The name of these entries, their status, the first ever direct sequels in the franchise, and the fact that they weren't being released on the then new 3DS console arguably did these games a disservice and masked their greatness. Make no mistake, though, these two are some of the finest games in the series, which I agree. After I'm done playing Black, I'm going to play White 2. This one right here. White 2. Oh, go back. All right, going down. This is a robbery that they put Pokemon Emerald from the Game Boy Advance in third. I mean, it's top 3 no matter what, but it's robbery they put it this low. Pokemon Emerald is the upgraded version of Ruby and Sapphire, and as you might expect, it was more evolution than revolution. It included some new story elements, and the whole region updated the locations where you could nab certain Pokemon, allowed you to catch a greater pool of Pokemon than its predecessor. It was one of the first Pokemon games that had, like, exclusives. Like, you could exclusively get something special in this game, and I'm not talking about just a Rayquaza, you know. Added the Battle Frontier, a competition island you can visit after beating the Elite Four to earn badges, buy items, and get new moves to teach your Mon. I cannot believe you put that in there and somebody said yes. Your Pokemon. Perhaps a little lacking in the wow factor for Pokefans who had been there since the beginning. You're a moron. Emerald was nonetheless solid. This one, everybody loves this. And I mean, why not? It's like one of the best ones ever made with the distortion world and everything. It was fire. For the new characters to the addition of the Battle Frontier and enhanced online experience, Pokemon Platinum certainly offered a lot of game for your money back in 2009. Instead of taking the easy way out and adding a couple minor things, Game Freak went out of its way to add a ton of worthwhile additions. They really did, that were enough to warrant a purchase even if you'd already played Diamond and Pearl when they released 2 years before. If you're only going to play one Gen 4 game, this is the one. I still love Pearl over Platinum. I just do. It's my thing. I've always loved Pearl. It was my first. But Platinum was definitely up there. And then everybody's favorite for some reason, I've seen this in like every list I've ever read. I don't know why, But Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver, the remakes of the original Gold and Silver. The original Gold and Silver games are fondly remembered by by Pokemon fans all over the world, and with good reason. They introduced features that genuinely evolved the original Game Boy games, such as breeding and an in-game clock, not to mention color. Features that have become series staples, regulars. In fan favorite Pokemon and these remakes were always going to be well received. Future games would trickle in additional, quality of life features and other innovations, but some would argue it never got better than traveling across the land, searching far and wide. Really? Did you just say that? In these DS remakes, the Game Boy originals may be hard to return to these days, but Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver strike the very best balance of nostalgia and that patented catch-em-all gameplay. But you had other reasonings why other games are better. Okay, if you want my opinion, I'm not going to rank them all, not tonight, but I will at least do my top 5. In 5th would be Pokemon Black and White, the originals. In 4th would be Emerald. In 3rd would be Platinum. In 2nd would be Black and White 2. And in 1st would be Pearl. That's my top 5. I love those games for that reason. And you can call me wrong or whatever, but those are my top 5. Because it's the ones I played and I loved the best. So anyway, thank you guys for watching. Hope you enjoyed this little list about, Pokemon. I didn't, because I felt there was way too much that was wrong, or at least not correct, at least to an extent. But anyway, like I said, thank you, and I will hopefully see you guys in my next video. If you've been enjoying my Pokemon series over here on the channel here at, my Pokemon Pearl series, go over and check that out. I'll leave the link to the most current video, or at least the one that's up, or at least to the playlist. Yeah, I'll leave a link to the playlist in the description. And I will see you guys in the next one. Have a good day, or good night, and good bye.